Let's stay with this theme, as I'm now joined by Colin Diener, who's Western Cape Head of Disaster Management, to give us some insight on what's happening in that space. Colin, what specific preparations are emergency teams especially making, especially in response to weather warnings issued by the Western Cape and also surrounding areas there?
Yeah, good afternoon, Nhlanhla. Thank you. Yes, so we got 3 warnings. The one warning that we particularly concerned around is a level 4 warning for snow, which is mostly for tomorrow. It's just started raining again. We received the warning, a level 2 warning for rain, which is about between 30 and 50 millimeters in scattered areas across the province. So we've got that rain with a cold front and then the snow that'll hit tomorrow. So specifically our high-lying areas, the Karoo, the Cape Winelands, that Oudtshoorn area, we're really concerned about that. We're not expecting the level of snowfall that we're seeing in other provinces. We're looking at between 5 and 15 centimeters. One of the biggest things we're doing in terms of preparation is the road passes, the mountain passes, where we expect there to be problems. So we have met, as we do when we receive these warnings, with all our stakeholders, and one of our biggest stakeholders being our provincial traffic department, our Department of Infrastructure. So we're looking at a couple of passes that could be problematic for us, specifically the Swartberg, the Franschhoek passes, the Hex River Pass. I just want to stress they're not closed at the moment. The snowfall is expected later. We've also received the damaging waves level 4 warning, which is going to take place today until Monday at 2300. That's in many areas from Cape Columbine to Cape Agulhas. So that combined with the very strong winds. So of course, what you do there is we work with the people in the maritime industry to ensure that that's that their facilities are protected. And then of course, it's the big thing is the warning. People in small craft should not go out in these conditions.
So Colin, I'm sure there are lessons to be learned, especially from the recent inclement weather experienced in parts of the country. How has this experience from recent snowstorms, for instance, how has it informed your current response strategy, especially for anticipated inclement weather?
Yeah, so Nhlanhla, I think what's really important is every time you have a major incident, and this year, if you start with the fires in January, we've managed 8 disastrous incidents in the province. And it's really very important that immediately after a disaster or a disastrous incident has happened, to sit down with all the stakeholders and to look at not only what did we do right and wrong and what we can do better, but which areas are now more vulnerable than what they were, before the previous incident. So we have got the vulnerable areas that are identified, and it's specifically in those areas where we'll focus. So we have a very strong combined kind of response resource in the province with all the different organizations getting together when we need to respond. They're not just government, but NGO and volunteers as well. And so that's like an ongoing kind of process where we prioritize being able to respond, as we get these warnings.
So what key messages would you like to add, especially that you should be communicating to the public to really ensure their safety as this weather conditions do change and the inclement weather also persists as well?
Yes, I think the important thing is there's a lot of platforms nowadays that provide warnings. It's not just, weather services. Those warnings go to radio stations, they go to media, and they get disseminated. And it's important, obviously, to ensure that you're getting the right warnings, because we've unfortunately also received a lot of fake warnings, but make sure you're getting it from a reputable source. And the warnings nowadays are also a lot more focused on which areas will be affected. So if you're in those areas, take heed of them. I'm always saying if you don't need to travel, don't travel. Stay indoors. The cold weather is very, very challenging, especially to people living in informal settlements, combined with rain and wet weather and strong winds. So I think it's really just very important to heed the warnings and really to take those kind of precautions. If help is needed, we have a lot of different organizations going out to provide help. And we give that information out. So, it's really just a question of listen to the reputable information and take heed of that.
Yeah. But how are your teams coordinating, especially with other local and provincial authorities, to indeed manage the potential impacts of the severe weather?
So we work on a system we call the JOC system, or the Joint Operational center system. We have the Provincial Joint Operations Center in Cape Town. And then each of our district municipalities has a very effective center in their different areas. So that ranges from the West Coast all the way across to the Garden Route. We then meet, the moment we receive a warning and we look at where the effect is going to be, we all meet. But that, that's not just the disaster management fraternity. It would be, people like our infrastructure, like transport, anybody that could play a role. We bring in the NGOs, around the humanitarian plan. It's all it's a strong plan. It needs to be activated according to what the warning is. And that's the way we would then go through an incident like that. We talk about resilience, and what the resilience is to ensure people are protected while the incident is taking place. We would then go over to a recovery phase after that, where you then start looking at, getting people back on their feet and, construction happening, roads repaired. So it's a long, it's a big process. It's taken many years for us to get here, but that's the kind of system that we put in place when it's necessary.
And speaking about systems, Colin, what systems are in place, for instance, for monitoring weather conditions in real time? And how quickly can emergency teams be deployed if needed?
Yeah, so I believe that emergency teams can be deployed rather fast. The South African Weather Services implemented what they call their impact-based weather system or weather warning system, which is generally for the emergency services a couple of years ago. It's a process that we work together with them. And we get those warnings, well in advance. Generally, we have to wait for the system to develop. But the moment we get those warnings, we start putting systems in place. So we would, for example, if we know there's going to be a major incident and we might need helicopters, for example, so we have a few we can access, we would forward place them, if you like, into areas where we might need them. We would speak to our NGOs and indicate to them, listen, we believe those and those areas might be problematic. Our infrastructure people would move, fleet of earth-moving equipment and construction equipment into certain places. And I mean, even earlier this year, we approached the provincial cabinet. We requested the Department of Education to close schools. And which they did for a couple of days. So, if we need to take those measures, the priority would always be life, and we would then focus on doing what is necessary for that period.
So in the context of the Western Cape, would you say there are adequate resources and equipment available for your teams to effectively respond to this potential emergencies which may arise from this cold front?
Yeah, Nhlanhla, I think the very important thing is that we've got to realize that, disasters of these kind of magnitudes are very, very, they're so complex. So what you do is what you learn from your previous incidents, you bring in and you build on that to improve your system. The province has spent, in the last 14 years, we've spent well over 200 million rand on resources to be able to respond to this. But we've got to understand that, even we've seen with fires in the US and Canada and Greece, your resources do become limited depending on the magnitude of the incident. But the incidents we've had to handle up to now, I think our resources have been in place and sufficient for us to deal with it.
I keep going back to this point, but I think it's important for us to stress this. What practical advice, Colin, can you offer to residents, especially in affected areas, to prepare for the expected cold and snowfall, especially for those in high altitude regions as well?
Yeah, look, the big thing is going to be the cold, the access. So, make sure that you have, if you're in those areas and the warnings indicate that you will receive that kind of impact, is, make sure that you've got enough resources to stay warm, to ride out the storm. Make sure that you've got access to food and water and all that. I mean, we have wide areas, mountainous areas, which is difficult to reach. For our agricultural, population, the people living on the farms, we do work with various, like Agri-Western Cape, the various agricultural groupings who also will then be in contact with us all the time, just to make sure that if somebody does get into trouble, we're able to reach them. But it's important, stay warm, stay indoors, protect your animals. those are the crucial things that people have to look at. And it's really important to look at your specific situation that you're in and what you need to protect yourself and, your family or people living in your community when this happens.
Thank you so much, Colin Diener, for sharing his insights on the preparations, especially for inclement weather affecting the Western Cape, but also surrounding areas, as we've heard that snow is also expected in parts of the Eastern Cape.